in the grand hall of blades on the planet Virelia, where jeweled swords lined the walls and warriors stood proud. The young noble Kyria walked with the confidence of someone born to royalty and raised on victory. She wore her battle robes like a crown, her silver hair glowing beneath the crystal ceiling, and her voice rang loud with laughter as she pointed toward a figure entering the hall, a human, old and wounded, dressed in weathered Terran armor that looked like it hadn't been polished in years. His steps were uneven, one leg dragging slightly, and his face bore the deep scars of many battles, yet he held his head high. "Is this the warrior our ancestors warned us about?" Kyria said mockingly, her voice echoing across the chamber, as other nobles joined her in laughter. "Did the earth send a ghost to impress us?" The man did not flinch. He walked forward, silent and steady, stopping before the throne, where Queen Virela, Kyria's mother, sat with a face like stone. The queen raised her hand, and the laughter died like a flame in water. Everyone turned toward her, expecting a formal dismissal or command, but instead the queen stood slowly and looked not at the human, but at her daughter. "Enough," she said softly, but it felt like a roar in the quiet hall. Then she looked at Kyria with eyes that no longer held pride, only a strange sadness. "You speak with no honor today, child, because that man is your parent." The words hit the room like an explosion. Shock froze the air. Kyria's face twisted, first in disbelief, then anger, then something else entirely, something deeper, more confusing. "What do you mean?" she whispered, her voice barely escaping her lips. The queen stepped down from her throne and walked toward the human, placing her hand lightly on his shoulder. "This is Commander Elias Venn, a Terran soldier, a hero, in a war you've only read about. He fought not just for Earth, but for peace here, and he is your father." Kyria took a step back, her mouth open, the color draining from her face. "That's not possible," she said, shaking her head. "I'm Virelian, pure blood." The queen's expression didn't change. "Not as pure as you thought." The nobles around them shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke. No one laughed. Now, Kyria turned her eyes to Elias, who met her gaze with calm, quiet eyes. He looked tired, not just from battle, but from years of watching from afar. "Why?" Kyria asked her mother. "Why hide this? Why lie to me?" The queen sighed, her voice heavy. "Because the world wasn't ready, and maybe neither were you." Rage surged in Kyria's chest, but it twisted with pain and something else she couldn't name. "I don't believe it," she said, and ran from the hall, her mind spinning with questions and memories. She had never thought twice about her strange dreams, her unmatched speed and training, the way her emotions sometimes burst like storms. Outside, the sun had dipped low, painting the city towers in firelight, but none of it touched her. She stood alone in the corridor, breathing hard, her hands clenched, and her thoughts racing. Inside the Hall of Blades, the queen sat beside Elias, both of them quiet. "Do you think she'll come back?" he asked at last. "She has your spirit," the queen replied. "She'll come back, but she won't be the same." And far down the hall, Kyria stood still, her heart breaking and rebuilding at the same time, as the truth she had always been denied now changed everything she thought she was. Kyria stormed through the crystal halls of the palace, her breath sharp and her hand shaking as the words echoed again and again in her mind. He is your parent. She could not believe it, would not believe it, and yet something inside her was trembling in a way it never had before. The guards stood aside as she passed, and when she finally reached her mother's private chamber, she didn't knock, she burst in. The queen stood by the window, looking out at the twin moons, her expression unreadable. Kyria's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Tell me everything." The queen turned slowly, her face softer now, no longer the ruler of Virelia, just a mother burdened with a long-hidden truth. "You deserve to know," she said. "Sit." But Kyria remained standing, arms crossed, eyes locked on her mother. The queen began, her voice low but steady. "Years ago, when the war between the Virelians and Terrans had reached its breaking point, a Terran unit crash-landed near the capital. Most were captured, a few killed, but one man survived the ambush and held off an entire squad to protect wounded civilians, even Virelian ones. That man was Commander Elias Venn. He was brought before the queen as a prisoner, but instead of hatred she saw something rare in him: courage, kindness, even in chains. Over time, their secret meetings grew longer. He never asked for mercy, only for understanding. Their connection deepened, and eventually she fell in love with him. Their relationship had to be hidden. Love between enemies was forbidden, and worse, dangerous. Then she became pregnant. The queen's voice cracked as she explained how, with the help of a few trusted allies, she concealed the truth. Kyria was born not in a royal chamber, but in a hidden sanctuary outside the city, and her mixed blood was masked with genetic cloaks to avoid suspicion. "You were never meant to be ashamed of who you are," the queen whispered, "but I was afraid the world would never accept it." Kyria's head spun. Her heart told her the story felt real, but her pride refused to surrender. "Why now?" she asked. "Why bring him here after all this time?" The queen looked at her with sorrow. "Because he has protected you from the shadows your whole life. And now enemies from that war have returned. He came not to be honored, but to warn us." Kyria backed away, struggling to breathe. Her whole life had been built on Virelian honor, the strength of a warrior's bloodline, the pride of being pure. Now every lesson, every victory felt like a lie. "I'm not him," she said. "I'm not human." The queen stepped closer. "You're more than one thing, Kyria. You are what happens when peace is chosen over hate. That is your strength." But Kyria shook her head and fled once more, this time to her chamber. She locked the door and paced, her mind a storm. Then, for the first time, she truly looked at herself in the mirror, not just her face, but her features, her eyes, her skin tone, her strange ability to sense emotion, to fight with both strategy and instinct. It had always set her apart. She had believed it was because she was exceptional, but now she feared it was because she was something else entirely. Her fingers brushed against the edge of her jaw, and she remembered the dreams, distant stars, burning skies, a voice that once called her by a name she didn't understand. She remembered a scar on her shoulder shaped like a crescent moon, a mark she had asked about as a child. Her mother had said it was a birthmark, but what if it was more? Kyria searched her old belongings, digging out the first training uniform she ever wore, and there, stitched into the inside tag by someone else's hand, was a simple Terran military script. She had never noticed it before. Her hand shook as she stared at it. Her mind no longer knew what was real. She needed answers from the one person who could give them, even if she hated what she might hear. She unlocked her door and walked back into the cold halls, each step filled with dread and determination. Somewhere deep in the palace, the man called Elias Van sat alone, waiting not with hope, but with patience earned through pain. He had watched his daughter from afar for years, knowing this day would come, praying she would be strong enough to face it. And now, as her footsteps echoed toward him, he stood slowly, ready to tell the truth not as a soldier, but as a father who had never stopped believing in the future he once held in his arms. Kyria stepped into the quiet chamber where Elias Van waited, her boots silent on the polished floor, her heart loud in her chest as she studied the man who claimed to be her father. He rose slowly, not as a soldier meeting a superior, but as a father standing before his child for the first time without shadows between them. The silence stretched, heavy and full of everything unsaid, until she broke it with a sharp voice. "Tell me something no one else could know." Elias looked at her for a long moment, then nodded and said softly, "When you were born, you didn't cry. You stared up at the lights and reached out, like you were trying to grab a star. You have a scar under your left collarbone, shaped like a crescent. You used to cry in your sleep, and I would hum an old earth song until you stopped." Kyria's breath caught. He was right about all of it. She opened her tunic slightly and touched the scar. Her mind screamed, but her soul whispered that the truth had always been waiting for her to see it. "Why didn't you stay?" she asked, her voice lower now. Elias looked away. "Because staying would have put you and your mother in danger. The council would have exiled her. You would have never had a life here. So I left, but I never stopped. Protecting you. Every threat, every shadow near you, I made sure it never reached you." Kyria frowned. "How?" "You were on Earth." He stepped toward a locked case near the wall and opened it, revealing a blade unlike any she had seen, half Verelian crystal, half Terran steel. "Because I had help, and because I always stayed closer than you think." He handed her the sword. "This is yours." She took it carefully, feeling a strange pull in her chest as her fingers closed around the grip. The blade felt alive, humming slightly in her hand. "It responds to blood," Elias said. "I forged it after the war, using both worlds' materials. It rejected everyone else who tried to wield it. But it will choose you." As he spoke, the blade shimmered faintly and settled in her grasp like it had found home. Kyria stared. At it, the weight perfect, the energy thrumming in tune with her breath. "Why now?" she whispered. "Why show yourself now?" Elias's face turned grim. "Because an old enemy has returned. The Vorn Dominion. They've tracked me here. But they don't just want me anymore, they want you. They know who you are now." Kyria felt a chill crawl down her spine. "What do they want with me?" "To erase you," he said. "Because you are proof of what they fear most, a bond between two worlds they want to keep apart." At that moment a sharp knock came at the door, and one of the royal guards stepped in, armor marked with urgency. "Princess Kyria, the Dominion envoy demands the human surrender. They call him a war criminal and threaten war if he remains." In the capital, Kyria's hand gripped the blade tighter. She looked at Elias, who remained calm, but she saw the storm behind his eyes. "They want blood," he said. They always have. The guard hesitated. There's one way to delay them. The Dominion follows ancient customs. You could invoke the right of challenge, a blood duel between champions. If you win, they must retreat. Kyria turned sharply. Who would be their champion? Xerox, the guard said, the butcher of Vorn, a name that made even seasoned warriors flinch. Kyria felt the blood in her veins boil. She looked down at the blade in her hand, then up at the man who had given her life and stepped into her path with nothing but love and silence. Then I'll fight him, she said. Elias moved quickly. No, he's not just powerful. He's ruthless. He kills without mercy. She met his eyes. So do I, when it matters. The guard bowed and left. Elias stared at her, torn between pride and fear. If you die, then I die with the truth, she said, but I won't run from it. He reached out and touched her shoulder. The first time in years his hand rested on his daughter. Then let me train you. One night won't make you perfect, but I can show you what saved me when I had nothing but a blade and hope. And so they trained long into the night beneath, stars that neither planet claimed. Elias taught her to move without sound, to strike without hesitation, to breathe like a soldier, and to feel like a fighter born from two worlds. And as the twin moons began to rise, Kyria stood at the edge of the dueling grounds, her sword in hand, her face calm and her soul ready to step into legend, not as a princess of Virelia or the daughter of Earth, but as the warrior the stars had been waiting for. The arena stood silent beneath the twin moons, their cold silver light bathing the ancient stones in ghostly glow, and every seat was filled with nobles, soldiers, and foreign eyes watching from hidden corners, all waiting to see if the rumors were true that the Princess of Virelia had challenged the champion of the Vorn Dominion in a duel to the death. Kyria stepped into the center of the ring, her armor a blend of Virelian elegance and Terran strength. The sword her father gave her held low but steady, and though her heart pounded, her face showed no fear. Across from her, Xerox emerged. Like a walking nightmare, tall and wide, his skin marked by battle scars and implants, his armor pulsing with dark energy as if it breathed with him, and in his hand was a brutal weapon that looked more like a beast than a blade. The crowd didn't cheer. They knew this was no show. This was a clash that could decide more than pride. If Kyria won, the Dominion would be forced to retreat under their own laws. If she fell, war would come, and Elias would be dragged away, in chains or worse. As the ancient horn sounded, Xerox wasted no time. He charged like a machine, his weapon swinging with enough force to split stone, and Kyria rolled aside just in time, her blade flashing as she aimed for his side, but the strike bounced off his shield. He laughed, deep and cruel. "You think a child of two worlds can defeat me?" he growled. "You are nothing but a mistake." Kyria said nothing. She remembered Elias's voice. Don't fight his strength. Fight his rhythm. She moved like water, dodging the next swing, slicing toward his leg. A spark flew, a cut made, but not deep. Xerox snarled and smashed the ground where she'd stood. Stone cracked. Dust rose. She darted behind him, fast and precise, her strikes quick and controlled, but every hit only chipped at his armor. The crowd leaned forward, silent and tense. The moons climbed higher. Xerox pressed harder, his fury rising, his attacks faster now, wild but powerful. Kyria's arms ached, her breath coming sharp, and for a moment he landed a glancing blow that knocked her off her feet. Gasps rose. Blood traced her cheek. She stood, slower this time, and saw Elias in the front row, eyes locked on hers, not pleading, not afraid, just full of belief. She thought of the scar she carried, the blade. That chose her, the truth she had feared, and the strength she had finally embraced. She gripped her sword with both hands, closed her eyes for a heartbeat, and when she opened them, she moved not like a princess, not like a soldier, but like something new, unpredictable, relentless, whole. She weaved through Xerox's next. Strike slid under his guard, and drove her blade into a weak point beneath his arm. He roared, twisted to throw her off, but she held on, kicked off his chest, and landed behind him. Before he could turn, she spun, her sword slicing through the back of his knee, and he dropped, one leg broken. Kyria stepped forward, sword at his throat. "Yield," she said. Xerox spat blood. "Finish it." "No," she answered. "That's your way?" "Not mine." The laws were clear, showing mercy and victory was her right. The judges rose, declared her the winner, and the crowd erupted, some in shock, some in joy, some in awe. The Dominion envoys stood, furious, but bound by their own code. Xerox was taken away in silence. Kyria turned and faced her people, lifting the blade high, her eyes fierce, her voice calm. "Let this be the end of hatred between bloodlines. I am not just one thing, I am both. I am proof that we can be more." Her words rippled through the arena like thunder. The queen stood slowly, and for the first time in public, placed her hand on Elias's arm. The message was clear, the old secrets were gone. The truth was out, and it had changed everything. Kyria left the arena not just as a victor, but as a symbol. The moons watched her go, and the stars above Virelia whispered of a new future. Being born beneath their ancient gaze, the name Kyria Ven spread across the stars faster than fire through dry leaves, whispered in council chambers, rebel outposts, and even on Dominion warships as the tale of the warrior who stood between two worlds and defeated the Butcher of Vorn without drawing his last breath, without becoming like him. On Virelia, her victory changed more than the air of politics. It changed the way people looked at her, and at humans too. Where once they saw her as only a princess of the crystal towers, now they saw a blade tempered by two flames, strong, not just in body, but in choice. But peace, as always, was fragile. Days after the duel, reports began to arrive, Dominion ships amassing near the border systems. Cloaked signals intercepted, whispers of something ancient and dark being awakened beneath the surface of distant moons. In the Queen's private war chamber, Kyria stood beside her mother and Elias, now no longer hiding in shadows, but sitting openly in the Queen's circle of advisers. "They'll come again," Elias said, pointing to the projected map. "This time they won't follow old rules. They'll come for you." Kyria looked at the pattern of enemy movements. "Then let them," she said. "But we won't wait this time. We won't hide behind old walls." She proposed something bold, a joint defense force between Virelians and Terrans, built not just from soldiers, but thinkers, builders, and survivors of both species. At first, many resisted, But others listened, remembering the way she fought, the mercy she showed, the unity she represented. Slowly, voices joined hers. Ships were shared. Training grounds opened to human warriors. Trust came, not all at once, but like dawn slow and sure. During the nights, Kyria trained harder, her bond with Elias growing as he taught her Terran tactics and shared stories of Earth's lost battles and hidden victories. One night he gave her something else, a small, battered datapad filled with recorded messages he had made for her as a child, in case he never returned. She listened to each one, heart heavy, soul awakening to the love she had never known, but had always been there, waiting. The next morning she stood before the combined Varelian-Terran command and spoke. I was born of war, hidden from both sides, but I will not lead from behind masks. I am Kyria Van, daughter of a human and a queen, and I do not fight, too. Divide I fight to protect all who dream of peace. Her words rippled far. Refugees from broken colonies came seeking her banner. Even a few former Dominion captains, weary of endless blood, sent envoys asking for talks. But then the stars trembled. From the deep edges of space, a massive Dominion dreadnought appeared, one thought lost for centuries, powered by technology far beyond what anyone knew. It moved without sound, black as night, erasing satellites as it passed. Messages were sent and returned only with coordinates for a battlefield. No negotiations, no mercy. The Queen turned to Kyria. They want a final answer. Kyria nodded. Then we give it to them. On the day of battle, 2 fleets met above the dead moon of Karanos. Below them the surface cracked with ancient scars. Kyria stood at the helm of her ship, the Starburn, not in royal armor, but in the suit her father once wore, now adapted with Varelian lightweave. At her side stood both Varelian captains and Terran officers, unified. The enemy opened. Fire first, and war returned to the stars. Explosions danced in the void, ships twisted in duels, and through it all, Kyria led like fire wrapped in steel, her commands sharp, her presence unshaken. She boarded the enemy dreadnought herself, leading a strike team through its black corridors until she reached the central core. There an ancient Dominion AI spoke. You are a mistake that should never have been born. Kyria stepped forward, her sword glowing in her hand. Then I am the mistake that will end you. She fought through waves of defenders, her team, falling one by one, until only she remained before the core. With her last strength, she drove her blade into its heart, and the dreadnought screamed as systems collapsed. Outside, the Dominion fleet faltered, then fractured. Some fled, some surrendered, and some simply vanished. Kyria drifted unconscious in the wreckage until Elias found her and carried her back, whispering, "You did it, Star Child." Days later, when she awoke, she was greeted not just by her mother and father, but by a galaxy that now spoke her name with awe, not fear. Kyria Van, once hidden in lies, now stood as a symbol of what the stars could be when love, courage, and truth stood stronger than war. And across 1,000 systems, people whispered her name with hope, because the warrior born of 2 worlds had shaken the stars, and they would never forget her.